the CEO of Ripple claims that the company will completely restructure the banking system. You know what's at the heart of that, people? It would be XRP, indeed. Indeed, without a doubt. The core of everything Ripple does is XRP. They never stop thinking about it. Additionally, their actions that have nothing to do with XRP are most likely indirectly tied to it. Just letting you know. Next, an expert from the Crypto Basic discusses why XRP escrow is not negative for the price in this headline. End quote. It's starving the market. I want to talk about that now. This is a fascinating subject to discuss, and it originates from a member of the XRP community who appears to be regularly posting sincere and intelligent posts on the social media site X. Furthermore, I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but why would I? Everybody will have different opinions. However, this is an excellent faith actor. In this case, I actually agree with him quite a bit, and that's also true in this instance. However, I would like to add a few points to this in order to give some depth to the discussion, as these are the kinds of topics that I usually find enjoyable to discuss in the community. These kinds of things are what made me want to launch a channel in 2018 so that I could share more thoughts like these. That's precisely what it is. Then, for fun, I'll end the film with something that has nothing to do with XRP. This is the Daily Huddle's headline. This is buck wild, too. This is a discussion on change. Discuss how the standard of living has changed. This is the Daily Huddle headline. Ross Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road, gets $31.4 million in Bitcoin. A Bitcoin gift has been made to Crypto Wallet. So consider this. His sentence changed from essentially it's life in prison to it's just. That was the final outcome. This man deserves life in prison. Being absurdly rich after receiving a pardon from the president. $31.4 million. To be honest, it doesn't end there. That's not all he has. However, I do want to be clear before continuing. I don't have any form of financial experience. I'm not giving financial advice, and whatever I say or write should not lead you to buy or sell anything. I'm merely a hobbyist who likes to create YouTube videos about cryptocurrency-related subjects for enjoyment. Okay, let's get started with this first component. Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, has urged the XRP community to put more emphasis on the long term than on an absurd competition with Bitcoin. Alright, I must pause. He's conveying the appropriate message. He is. I'll do it. It's okay. An absurd rivalry with Bitcoin, you know. In actuality, most of us don't have any issues with members of other crypto communities. The majority of us are, if you will, rather calm and non-aggressive toward the other tribes. We're not arbitrarily throwing away all other coins. We're not arguing that people's financial sovereignty is in danger because of other coins. We're not saying that everyone in other communities acts in bad faith. To be clear, however, it is what the poisonous Bitcoin maximalists think of us. Indeed, they do. We are the enemy in their eyes. If you were unaware of it, you might have thought, oh, wow, I'm part of a new crypto community, when you realize that XRP makes sense. Take a look at this. I work in cryptocurrency. It all makes sense with XRP. The other coins make sense. You say, look, I'm now a part of a larger group. Well, only to a certain extent, at least in terms of sensible others joining you. Yes, you made a lot of enemies, though. You did, indeed. Just by sincerely believing that XRP is a force for good and that it makes sense. You made a lot more adversaries. Bitcoin maximalists who are toxic believe you are the worst thing in the world. They really do. Therefore, I don't think less of those who want to attempt and develop anything they desire, including Bitcoin. I don't give a damn. It makes no difference. People with that kind of attitude on life are terrible, and I simply detest them. They are poisonous. So, yes, irrational competition. It really is. However, it's not our fault. We're not obsessed with Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency pet rock. Just saying, you know. In any case, Garlinghouse emphasizes cooperation over rivalry, and Ripple is creating a revolutionary environment. He stated that Ripple is creating an ecosystem that would revolutionize the whole financial sector, which should be exciting for the community, in his remarks at the just-finished XRP Las Vegas conference. In order to close the gap between blockchain technology and international financial institutions, Ripple designed its business model. Ripple's innovation is in integrating banks into the financial future, whereas the emerging sector concentrates on eliminating monetary centralization and control associated with banks. And that's the kind of thing that makes us the devil, people, though we also want a centralized authority. I just believe that it makes sense to have a more effective system that is already in place while still giving individuals the option to conduct value transactions using the XRP ledger or Bitcoin. Whichever it is, without that, we are horrible if we don't insist on that and want it only. Naturally, they turn into such hypocrites because banks have closed their foolish little face holes now that they have accepted Bitcoin more than any other coin. The banker's coin is XRP. So, you little bitch, what the devil do you think Bitcoin is? Do you mean me? It's quite clear. They will still oppose anything that would benefit a bank in a hypothetical scenario, which is why you've seen them tone down some of that terminology. All they want is for it to disappear. In any case, the private company wants to make remittances smooth and effective by innovating cross-border payments by bringing them on-chain. This eliminates the need for pre-funding, middlemen, and sluggish international money transfers. This strategy would, quote, rewire the entire banking system, end quote, making Ripple a giant in the cross-border payment and remittance market, according to Garlinghouse, who cited the company's CTO, David Schwartz. Now, people, XRP is clearly at the heart of it. He doesn't even need to mention it. Of course, it's what's on the line here. And for XRP to be viable in the long run, it just requires one use case, one successful use case. Any coin only needs that. Therefore, even with Ripple's actions alone, it has already been accomplished there. Of course, XRP is capable of many other things. Additionally, you can use it to pay others in your private life. Things can be tokenized. Real-time money streaming is possible. It simply works. And it turns out that investors and individuals are genuinely interested in that. However, this is the method being utilized to rewire the global banking system as a whole. That is the current situation. And at the heart of this lies XRP. It's a fundamental component of this, which is why I continue to maintain that XRP is a clear early winner in the cryptocurrency market. Why do I say that today? And do I have any doubts about it? I've been running this YouTube channel until very recently, and I'm wording things differently than I did for the most part. Since that has already occurred, I have no doubts. The adoption process has already taken place. There are already use cases. Right now, we're only discussing scaling them up. Then, as more individuals invest in cryptocurrency, more money comes in. Then there's the price, which is the primary concern for the majority of us, as we see this as an investment opportunity. Toxic Bitcoin maximalists are not who we are. It's not a cult. This is not our spouse. We are just concerned about the final price increase, aren't we? Therefore, I'll say that and sell everything if XRP ever stops being a wise investment. After that, it will be that. Hopefully, I'll be able to keep up all of the friendships I've formed inside the XRP community after that, because I cherish that. Although I'm not married to XRP, I do appreciate all of the human connections that come with the bill, of course. However, I don't consider it a cult. Furthermore, it isn't actually for anyone present. Compared to the Bitcoin community, it is very different. The Bitcoin community is poisonous and a cult. It bothers me. In any case, peace endures. Surprisingly, this initiative should be enough to encourage the adoption of XRP, and the CEO stressed that it should be sufficiently appealing to enthusiasts in the ecosystem. We undervalue the magnitude and significance of that transformation, he said. He also emphasized that when the community looks back in 10 or 20 years, everything will make sense. Indeed, and it might occur earlier. We are currently at a position where we are witnessing a rise in acceptance and more money moving into the field, particularly since the United States, the world's largest capital market, is just now adopting cryptocurrency on a large scale. That will speed things up. Additionally, the regulatory ambiguity is disappearing. This is all really significant, so perhaps he is correct. After 10 to 20 years, there will be full implementation, but in the meantime, we have already witnessed it grow significantly and annually. I believe that it will be seen literally from year to year. We're fortunate to arrive early. A significant component of all of this is XRP. It simply is. Additionally, an expert explains why XRP escrow is not bad for prices. Quote, it's starving the market. It's a quote. A commentator in the XRP community has argued that the Ripple escrow system does not hurt the price of XRP because it deprives the market of more tokens. Some have claimed that Ripple's ownership of billions of XRP creates a centralized structure, which could lead to price suppression. All right, folks, we need to distinguish between a concentration of wealth, like that of XRP, and a centralization of a system, like that of Ripple with XRP. Proof of stake is not XRP. It is irrelevant how much XRP you own. No matter how much you own, it will never grant you any particular authority or privileges over XRP or the XRP ledger in general. It won't. It isn't programmed to. It will not take place. There is no correlation between quantity held and centralization. It's incredible that even in 2025, we still need to remind the Bitcoin community of that. Unfortunately, we do. They're just being intellectually dishonest, in my opinion. Even though they don't, they simply assert it. It's not logically sound. They just keep claiming that's what it is. In any case, detractors like Bitcoin maximals assert that Ripple's monthly ESCO releases create supply pressure by acting as token dumps. Notably, some members of the XRP community think that the price rise is being slowed by these monthly deliveries. Alright, technically speaking, any XRP sold will have a detrimental effect on that front. Isn't it a negative effect on pricing if you sell one XRP? The question is, in a sea of XRP transactions, who will notice that one? You would notice it if there were 5 transactions a year and then one occurred. That is not true. Over 6.5 million XRP wallets exist, and there are absurdly high transaction volumes per day. Technically speaking, Ripple's transactions accomplish the same goal. However, the problem is that those transactions are really small. The percentage of XRP sold by Ripple in any given quarter is minuscule, and we are aware of this since they have been reporting on it for years. Additionally, you can observe their actions on chain. It is less than 1%. It is therefore undetectable while discussing such a small amount. Global market activity doesn't pause when Ripple sells. It doesn't react. Those transactions are so small. It makes no difference. Thus, it holds true across several decades. Yes, you're talking about almost doubling the amount of XRP that will be present in the ecosystem as opposed to its current level, after all. Yes, indeed. To put it another way, it's not now preventing the price of XRP from rising destructively. That isn't taking place. And if you look at the percentage rise, you can call it inflation or whatever you want to call it. It's the increase in the amount of money in circulation. Many chains that have experienced rapid expansion have tokenomics that enable ever-increasing token introduction. In other words, it doesn't matter as long as there is enough demand. Check out this post, then. I won't read the entire discussion, but anything that was written about XRP was included. Some claim that escrow suppresses price, he added. It stabilizes it, according to some. Here's the twist, though. ETFs, on-demand liquidity, and use cases may increase as escrow decreases and supply becomes more constrained. The drip fee may be outpaced by demand. That's a decent way to describe it, then. There's a drip fee since Ripple sales are so low. It's a lot when you consider decades in the past. Nobody disputes that. However, it makes no difference in the short term. It doesn't preclude us from achieving wealth that can change our lives. In actuality, Ripple was still selling in 2017 when XRP reached its highest point ever. In 2025, Ripple was still selling when it reached its highest point ever. What is more important, then? Demand is the reason. Any supply growth will be greatly outpaced by demand. By the way, it won't matter how Ripple got there once all of its escrowed XRP is in circulation. I'd like to discuss that as well. It won't make a difference. Toxic Bitcoin maximalists act as though original sin is the same as any chain that creates all of its native currencies at the beginning, simply producing everything at the beginning. Additionally, it's acceptable to use just Bitcoin's proof-of-work mining method, which creates new Bitcoin in a legitimate and sacred distribution system. However, maximalists who are part of a cult find that to be a foolish idea. That dumb concept is for that person. A bunch of stupid sticks. A group of primitive troglodytes with brains the size of cashews that drag their knuckles and breathe through their mouths. Those little bitches are the target audience. It's for that person. Who really cares once everything is in the wild? Look at this, please. This post was published by Ripple on May 16, 2017. Their blog is called Ripple Insights. In order to guarantee the whole supply of XRP, Ripple will put 55 billion XRP in escrow. The news was released at that point, and they acted in December. Take a look at this chart. They anticipated that the XRP distribution would look like this. Over several decades, almost all of it was released into the wild. Additionally, since it has been 8 years, it is somewhat disconnected from this in actual time. Although it's not exactly right for this, it's actually a rather accurate prediction. In any case, their ultimate goal is to get it all out there. Therefore, if it's in circulation and you're using it, or you're using Bitcoin, why would you give a damn about how it got there in the first place? Who cares once all XRP is in use and all Bitcoin has been mined? It doesn't matter, is the answer. Mining is irrelevant. It's not holy because of it. And I want to just tear that story to pieces whenever I have the chance because I'm so sick of it. Bitcoin maximalists who are toxic are simply obnoxious jerks. Simply put, they are unbearable. Unbearable. The worst part of being in cryptocurrency is dealing with them. Definitely. Let me say that they irritate me, but I'll stop talking about it. Ross Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road, receives a $31.4 million Bitcoin payment from the Daily Hodl to crypto wallet. Take a look at this. Ross Ulbricht, the founder of the online marketplace and the original Bitcoin user, has received millions of dollars in Bitcoin donations after making his first public appearance since his release from prison. At this point, I'll take a moment to mention that I assume everyone is aware of Ross Ulbricht's identity. Perhaps not, unless you're completely new to cryptocurrency. If so, please feel free to search Google a little bit further. However, he founded Silk Road, an online marketplace where users could use Bitcoin to pay for essentially illegal goods, and a lot of awful things happened. The fact that Bitcoin is not anonymous is just one of the many reasons why it turned out to be a horrible concept. It's a pseudonym. You can see where the flows go, who is purchasing what, and where it came from, even if a name isn't connected to an account. As it happens, that was a very poor idea. On-chain forensics can be used to determine the source of it. People were unaware of that at the time. Now it's funny. Anyway, the article goes on. Early on Sunday, Ulbricht got 300 Bitcoin, or around $31.4 million, in his donation wallet, according to blockchain tracking company Look On Chain. According to Arkham data, within a few hours after receiving the donation, the majority of the coins were transferred to the cryptocurrency exchange Kraken. President Trump pardoned Ulbricht earlier this year, and he made his first public appearance since his release from prison this past weekend when he spoke at the Bitcoin 2025 conference. Connor Grogan, the director of Coinbase, claims that tens of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin are still in wallets that Ross Ulbricht left behind after being imprisoned for his involvement in the Silk Road. By the way, many people are guessing, and it's simple to understand why he would genuinely contribute this to himself. He therefore had some Bitcoin hidden away. Now that he is out, he has given it to himself and is essentially laundering it with mixers and other tools to obtain the money for himself. I'm not claiming that's true or not. I'm positive I don't know. However, I am presenting some of the conjectures that are circulating here. It's fascinating. That sum of money seemed to be too large to gift to someone simply. Don't you think that's just too large? More than $30 million? After all, come on. I hear that from you people, but it seems excessive to me. In any case, Grogan claims that although the US government has tens of thousands of bitcoins linked to Silk Road, they were unable to obtain all of the coins. I discovered 430 bitcoin in dozens of wallets linked to Ross Ulbricht that had remained unopened for more than 13 years and had not been seized by the US government. These were most likely dust wallets back then. They now have a combined value of $47 million. End quote. Welcome back, Ross. Alright, that's absurd. Consider small sums of money that are so worthless that you will simply leave them in your wallet. However, after more than 10 years, Bitcoin has increased in value to the point where the total of those dust particles in the accounts is $47 million. And then you say, I don't even want them. I adore that. That kind of thing will also happen with XRP, you know. There will be accounts where people think, oh, there's this little bit left, and they will return and say, oh, that's kind of worth a fortune now. I mean, we don't and never will have a Ross Ulbricht situation. There will be such stories, after all. Simply go ahead a decade or two. There will be a variety of bizarre tales. It's a great time to get involved in crypto. I do not provide financial advice. Nothing I write or say should influence you to buy or sell anything. That is a really, really awful idea.